Hello, and welcome to The Swing of Things. In this episode, I'm joined by Bott, the executive director and founder of STEM to Stern. STEM to Stern is a national rowing program that addresses major barriers to participation faced by many students from under-resourced communities. Will started the program as a way to increase diversity, inclusion, and access at the Milwaukee Rowing Club. He has led STEM to Stern as it has grown into a program that now works with many clubs from around the country. Bott, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm doing well here on this Monday night. Were you out at practice today?
No, so I have been working on our big fundraiser that we're doing, and just kind of getting things set up for our partnership.
Great. Well, speaking of which, let's back up a little bit and make sure that everybody knows who you are. Bott, founder and executive director of STEM to Stern. And why don't you just start with telling us about, why did you start STEM to Stern? What's the story there?
Yeah, so I rowed in high school at the Milwaukee Rowing Club, and my senior year I had planned to row in college and, try to either walk on to UW-Madison's team or find a school that would really kind of fit me for rowing in college. And my senior year, though, I ended up taking a couple classes. I was from a suburb of Milwaukee, and I took a couple classes in downtown Milwaukee. And it was really one of the most kind of eye-opening experiences of my life, and so much so that it really actually changed my trajectory from wanting to row in college to actually wanting to stay in Milwaukee. And one of the cool things, and it was just such a lucky blessing that this happened, but my coach at the time, he said that if I was able to stick around in Milwaukee, I would actually have a job coaching at the Milwaukee Rowing Club through college. And so I took him up on that offer and studied sociology and journalism at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and coached through college.
Wow. Okay. Do you remember your first time coaching?
I remember my first year coaching. Absolutely.
Do you remember the first time you took a boat out with a coaching launch?
It was one of the learn to row sessions that my coach and then boss had me do, take a boat out, brand new rowers, and try to teach them how to row. So I actually got my feet wet doing LTR stuff.
Good. So you were both sort of learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. One of my, I don't know why I'm admitting this in a podcast, but one of my very first, my very first coaching experience was also in Wisconsin, in Madison.
Oh, cool.
And I was asked to take out a group of novice girls who'd never been in an 8 before, walk-ons. And I was given one of those Zodiac launches with an outboard engine. And I said, yeah, I can figure this out. And I couldn't figure it out. And so a real low point was when I found myself sort of creeping up on the stern of that boat, and my boat was sort of coming up into 8 seats lap, and the girls were saying, "What's happening?" And I said, "This is how it's supposed to be." They didn't know. So I said, "Yeah, I just want to be real close in there with you guys so I can see what's happening." But it was certainly the blind leading the blind. I think we've made progress on coaching education since I learned.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think back to I was an 18, 19-year-old kid coaching, high schoolers. These were former teammates of mine too. And I feel like I grew up pretty quick, especially those first couple of years with coaching guys and kids who had been on my team, who were former teammates of mine. But coaching is honestly, I think, just such a valuable job to have, just such an amazing thing to do and to experience. So I did that for 10 years.
Oh wow, okay, you did that for a long time. So how did that transition into STEM to Stern? Tell us that story.
Yeah. So after college, I ended up becoming the head coach after so I'd been the novice coach through college, and after college, things just kind of transitioned, and my former boss, we ran the team together. He moved on, and I became the head coach, and I was really looking to get involved in the city of Milwaukee, the community outreach efforts really just trying to figure out kind of my place as a white guy from the suburbs in Milwaukee. And I'm so passionate about the city. I'm one of the the Milwaukee fans that you will find, and we're just so passionate about our city and about really bringing people together. Milwaukee is such a mix of people. There's so much diversity, so many different cultures, but it's also one of the most segregated cities in the country. And I saw that firsthand when coaching rowing and then working at the school that I ended up working at. So out of college, I got a job at 53rd Street School, 53rd and Keefe, in the inner city of Milwaukee, in a kind of low income area with kids who were experiencing trauma, poverty, and segregation, really the effects of segregation. And it was just the craziest 2 years because I would spend the first part of my day in this school working with the kids. I was a middle school paraprofessional. And the goal really was I want to spend a year, which ended up turning into 2 years, really being in this system, being in this environment, and really just trying to build my skills and just to kind of see what it was all about. I was thinking about doing City Year. I was thinking about doing Teach for America. And then I looked online, and sure enough, tons and tons of jobs in the Milwaukee public school system of teaching assistants and all sorts of things. And so I thought, instead of doing a program like that, I'll just apply for that job. And so anyway, it was just such a crazy illustration of really the issues in our city and also our country, where the first 6 hours of my day were spent at this school on the north side of Milwaukee. And then after that, I would go to rowing practice and coach for 2 hours. And it was the two opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to overall wealth and like the wealth and poverty disparity, the color disparity. There was just, you could just see firsthand how segregated our city was. And so STEM to Stern was really the vision of like, this is just wrong. Like, it's just not how things should be. And how can I use, what I have access to, and how can I use my privilege? I'm choosing to be in this school. I'm choosing, I have the ability to kind of move from one world to the next. And so I started to think about, okay, what are some ways that we could get more access onto the rowing team? And so I started going to high schools and bringing ergs and doing all sorts of things. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm working with the kids on a daily basis who could come and row. And so STEM to Stern started with a few kids who I was especially tight with. They would wait after school. They would actually get in my car. I would drive them to rowing practice. They'd sit on my launch when I would coach the high school boys team. They would practice with our middle school team, and then I would drive them home afterwards. And that was really how the quote unquote outreach program at the Milwaukee Rowing Club started. And that was kind of the beginnings.
That was so very sort of organic, huh? You were just in that space and you saw the need and you brought it together, which is pretty amazing. And what did the kids think of rowing? That first group of kids, what did they think of the sport?
They absolutely loved it. I think it was one of these things where they had never been to the Milwaukee River before. They had never actually seen Lake Michigan. Most of the kids who were in that first group had never been to Lake Michigan, which is about 3 miles away from where the kids were coming from, and they hadn't been there. And so it was just, I think, probably one of the most amazing experiences of their lives. One of the important things was I had such a close, tight relationship with all of them that it was like, we get to go after school and hang out with Mr. Will in his car and go to watch the boys team practice.
You weren't just some big weird white guy.
Yeah, no, exactly.
saying,
No,
get in my car.
Exactly. Right. No, those relationships were, I mean, so important with the kids, with the parents, you know, and so no, but it was just so amazing. Like the relationships that we started to see forming between the kids that were coming from my school, 53rd Street School, and then the kids that I was coaching on the middle school team. Those relationships started to form, and those friendships started to build, and it was just really incredible. And it made me think about, like, okay, how can we do what I'm doing with, you know, 4 kids in my car to, like, let's get a van and do this with a van of kids, and let's actually figure out a way to, like, make this a sustainable program. And that's what we did. So
then you grew that program, and then tell us where STEM to Stern is now. Then fast forward, that was 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
So yeah, actually that was like 4 or 5 years ago. STEM to Stern, we grew the program from those first kids to a van of kids, and then we added a swimming component because we realized very early on that most of the kids didn't know how to swim. And so swimming lessons were just an obvious essential to our program. And then it wasn't until MSOE approached us, the Milwaukee School of Engineering. They reached out to me and said, hey, Will, how can we get involved? And we had a couple other people at our rowing club involved with MSOE and with the Milwaukee Rowing Club that really came together and thought through, okay, how can we support kids not only with transportation and swimming and on the rowing side of things, but the kids that we were working with in some way, in some cases, were years behind in school, especially in math and science. And so that was what MSOE did best, math and science. And so they brought the STEM portion of STEM to Stern to the table, and that was really when the model was set.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things that drew me to this model, was thinking, one, the integration, one, that this wasn't a separate standalone, quote unquote outreach program. This was an effort at integration, and then also the commitment to the academic piece. So that came, that also seemed to happen organically too with you all. And I was really drawn right away to those parts of the model that you created.
Yeah, we really want to create success not only on the water, but off the water too. And that's, we all know the great life skills that you can learn as a rower, and the discipline and the hard work and all of that stuff. But the reality is that a lot of the kids participating in this program, regardless of how well they learn to work or how that team, all the positives, there are some real gaps when it comes to education, the education gap in our country. And we just thought that in order to be really a responsible program, we have to address this education gap.
Yep. That sounds familiar to me too. So tell us what's, I'm sort of burying the lead here, but tell us what's next for STEM to Stern. What's the vision? And, of course, we can talk about what is this partnership that's happening as we speak?
Yeah. So I am just so thrilled because, in this last year, STEM to Stern has grown out of Milwaukee. It started with a club in Madison, the Mendota Rowing Club, and then just took off from there. We're working in Oakland, we're working in Trenton, we're working in Madison, in Milwaukee, in Providence, Rhode Island. We're really working all over the place, and so we're very excited to announce that. Is this okay to do?
Yes.
Okay. We are very excited to announce that US Rowing is going to be partnering with STEM to Stern to really just grow this mission and to really launch us even further than we were going to get before. So I'm just obviously so excited and super thrilled because I see so much that US Rowing is going to bring to the table, coupled with the mission and the vision, and really the program and infrastructure that we have. I mean, I really think the sky's the limit.
It's mutual. And I actually asked folks beforehand, can Will and I talk about this? But by the time this airs, we will have gone public with all of this. And we're, needless to say, so thrilled at US Rowing that this is all coming together and that we can take your vision and really help grow it around the country, this stem to stern model, because we believe so strongly in making the sport accessible to young people around the country, regardless of means to pay or where they're coming from or whether their parents were rowers. It should be more open for any young person who wants to be in a boat. So we're beyond excited. I guess my next question for you is around when a program signs up. So a team comes to you or a program comes to you from a new city and says, "Will, we want to bring stem to stern here. We want to, our boathouse has, we would love to have diversity. We'd love to have inclusion. We'd love to bring more people into this boathouse. We haven't done it yet." So where does stem to stern come in with you? Well, soon with US Rowing. What do you do? What happens?
And we hear that all the time. I hear, Will, we want to become more diverse. We want to become more accessible. We just don't know how.
Yes.
And one of the, I have heard that so much more.
I was hearing that before you were alive, Will Bott.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully I'm not that much older than you. But yes, I've been hearing it for about 20 years.
We want to figure it out. We just don't know how. And honestly, like that to me is like, I hear that and it's like, I remember wanting to figure it out and not knowing how to. And what's been really cool is working with people around the country to really figure out, okay, what are the major barriers that are stopping many of your kids from your community from rowing on your team. And a lot of times it comes down to a few things: transportation, swimming competency, and really lack of access to rowing, because rowing is just super expensive. And so our model, what we do is we will meet with the team. So we'll have a Zoom call and we'll kind of figure out, okay, what are your goals for diversity, equity, inclusion at your club, and then we just start putting the program and the infrastructure in place. So we provide an 8-component model of working with clubs to establish relationships with partner schools or community organizations in their community, working on figuring out the transportation piece, the swimming piece, the education, the STEM education piece. And then we provide training. We provide helpful tools for rowing coaches who are going to be working now with kids from all over their city. We provide facilitator training. We also help clubs find those volunteers, find those facilitators. And then we provide snacks. So 88 Acres is one of our sponsors, and they provide snacks.
Snacks are key.
So key.
Snacks are key. Yeah.
And then lastly, we work with clubs to really make this sustainable through fundraising in their community. And so it's really those 8 components that we step by step work with the club to implement. And we've found that with the proper training and the proper infrastructure, rowing can become so much more accessible, so much more diverse, and so much more competitive. We're now drawing from more kids in our communities. Clubs are going to be bigger. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more representative of the city that they actually say they come from. And that's really, it's really exciting and important.
It's all good stuff. It's all so good, and I can't tell you, we're beyond excited to actually help operationalize this with you all this fall. So one last question for you, because I always have to ask this of my guests, and then I did promise that I would let you turn this around and ask a couple questions if you wanted to. But do you still row? Do you row at all, Will? So, that's not even the question. You can, that's not the main question.
Yeah.
But do you row?
So I rowed back in Milwaukee. My wife and I actually just recently moved to San Diego, and I haven't gotten immersed into the rowing scene out here.
Because the weather's so bad out there and you just can't get out. Yeah.
The weather's been great. Yes.
Yeah.
No, the weather's been amazing.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't really gotten totally immersed out here yet.
Okay, that's fine. let's say you were rowing and you've done a really hard workout and you're coming into the dock. What's your go-to favorite meal?
Oh. And it was a really hard workout?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was miserable. It was miserable.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say two things. Either like a huge bowl of mac and cheese to get those carbs back. That's all me. Or like a big juicy burger. Those
Okay, first, I love how much care you put into that question. I really respect that. Two, for some reason, both of those sound so gross to me.
After a good workout?
No, I mean, well, okay, that's true. But it really depends on, is it hot out? Like, you're in San Diego, it's hot, right?
Yeah,
like,
I guess my rowing days were cold,
yeah,
crappy
you're thinking
days
you're cold.
in Milwaukee.
You're not cold. You're in San Diego. Okay, back in Milwaukee, I get it.
Back in Milwaukee.
Maybe have the mac and cheese on the side.
Out here, it would be some acai bowl, or
there you go.
It would be better. Yeah.
There you go.
And I'm also at an age where like I eat a bowl of mac and cheese and I put on like pounds, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So
yeah.
No,
I think you can complain to me about that. Yeah.
Out in San Diego, I would choose. I've actually gotten really into, and I'm looking for the best acai bowl in San Diego.
I made some yesterday.
Oh,
here
really?
In Brooklyn.
Cool.
Yeah, at home. So
very cool.
I'll make you one.
I'll have to try that out sometime.
Yeah, you will. All right. So, do you have any questions? I'll give you two.
Yeah, I absolutely have a ton of questions. I am very interested in a little bit of your background. What are some experiences that you had when you were growing up that you felt got you to kind of where you know? Most people who grow up, you know, kind of in like the suburban or I guess, you know, as kind of a quote unquote typical rower end up, you know, going to a great school, going to get some degree and you know, making a good living and whatever. And I guess there are some experiences that I'm really interested in. I guess, have there been experiences that you had that kind of shaped the trajectory of your life into focus on equity?
Oh, that's a big question, Will. Wow. And people don't ask that often. They'll ask about the beginnings of Row New York, but not necessarily going back that early. I'd say, you know, if you want to go back to really young me, I grew up until high school in New York City and went to a super progressive school downtown, where I always joke that I learned about like being a good human before I learned about a 5-paragraph essay. It's called Little Red. It still exists. Very progressive. It's all about be a good classmate, be a good friend, be a good community member, above all else. Sometimes, you know, I think my parents were a little worried when I didn't know the state capitals. But, you know, be a good human. And in high school, actually, there was no rowing. I went to high school out on Long Island and I became a big runner. So cross country, I was the only girl on the boys cross country team because there was no girls team. And then I ran long distance and track, and the neighboring town to our town didn't have a track or a track team. And it was mostly African-American high schoolers. And so they combined with us. And I started to notice at that point that, you know, track was really the only place that we engaged. It was very segregated otherwise, school. The white kids hung out with the white kids and the black kids hung out together and the Latino kids hung out together. And you really didn't cross those lines. And except at track. And track was the one thing, as sports have the power to do, to bring people together. And I think that's when I first started to realize that it's around 14. Wow, we live in a very segregated place. And as a country, I don't think it was unique to where I was on Long Island, all the way at the tip of Long Island. But that stuck with me. And I really was drawn into this work of rowing and making it more accessible fast forward to beyond college, and I started working at community rowing in Boston, and I coached any and every group that came through, Perkins School for the Blind, Harvard Business School, men, club, anyone. I'd say, oh, yeah, I want to coach them. And then there was a new program there at the time called Girls Row Boston that brought girls from under-resourced communities in to learn to row. And I remember saying, oh my goodness, yes, I absolutely want to coach those girls. And I'll never forget, they said, okay, well, we'll interview you. And I think I was pretty humble, but I remember thinking at the time, interview me. Like, I was basically born to do this job. Like, it's everything I care about, education and young people and access and the sport of rowing. I got the job. I mean, I don't know that anyone else even interviewed for it, and that was the beginning, really, was falling in love with that experience, with that group of girls, and seeing, just as you did, in Milwaukee, but this was in Boston, how much rowing can change anyone's life, but it has an edge, I think, when you're talking about kids who've really never had the opportunity before to recognize how strong they are, or how much strength you can build off of one another, or that community, or these coaches who care so deeply about you. It was very moving, and I feel basically forever indebted to that group of young women.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear those experiences that really sort of even just kind of set you up to have maybe a mindset that can see things in kind of a different way. So that's awesome. And then can I ask one from this list?
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me. I don't know what it says. Is it How I Met My Husband?
Yeah, well, yeah, we can. No, so like, we are both, white people in this space. This is something that has been really, really challenging for me as somebody who started this program and is looking to really bring this to different cities around the country. And I guess, what has your experience been? And I guess, do you have any advice for me? Do you have any advice for listeners and other people who may feel like allies, but may need to learn a few things?
I would say that it has been a journey, and I'd say that I've made my fair share of mistakes and taken missteps through this journey of being a white woman leading an organization, mostly serving, when I was at Row New York, of course, not US Rowing, young people of color. And I think in the early years, I don't think that I took into account just how limited my sort of lens was because of my own privilege. And it took learning, from reading and listening and understanding that there are certain pieces I would never fully understand. And I had to sort of get comfortable with that, right? Because it wasn't an experience that I had, right? And so it was learning to ask questions and to try to take a moment and take a breath and understand the perspective of others. And ultimately, I think the goal was and still is, in these places, can you help elevate people of color so that they're in these leadership positions? Can you use your privilege and your spot in leadership to bring other people up who wouldn't have necessarily the same access and ease in that path? And it doesn't take away from, the care. And I think I used to think, like, wait a minute, I'm doing this work because I care, and I'm not the quote unquote bad guy here, because that's honestly how it can feel, but it's not about you, right? It's about the work, and it's about, can you help bring other people into that space so that they are leading this work, and I am supporting them. And I've certainly not always been successful in that. And that's why I guess I call it a journey. And, we all have, I'd say, a lot of learning to do. And I think if we can all sort of be patient with one another, right, and ask good questions and understand when we all take missteps, I think that's helpful. And I'm very indebted to, some people of color in my life who have been great guides, right, and spoken, taught me so much. And I think a good dose of humility is important too in this work, right? And I imagine, you're one young white guy. You don't even have not even a woman. But I think finding your teammates, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess just in some of I think the idea of it being a journey is just so spot on. And I've found too, like the authenticity of the relationship that you have with kids you're working with, is just so, it's so important. Like when it is real, it is real. And and I think at the end of the day, like STEM to Stern really comes down to relationships and how can we develop those authentic relationships, because when you know somebody from the neighborhood that's on the news every night, you look at that neighborhood and you look at the people on the other side of town a little bit differently because you're teammates with kids from that area. And I think that the authenticity is just, it's so important. Because there is give and take in a relationship. There are missteps, there is failure, and I guess in my experience, it's been, my relationships have been very real and as authentic as possible. And I think part of that has to do with not seeing, as a white leader in this space, not seeing yourself as like, oh, I'm going to save these kids, or these kids are my project. It's not that at all. It is about how it's about how you can be an advocate and how you can have the back of somebody who may need it, and how you can be really real and vulnerable and build just really strong, authentic relationships with kids. And
yeah, I have some bad news for you, which is that everything you're saying, I agree with. And the bad news is I think that's so much easier when you are working with young people as a teacher or coach. And because you are building those relationships on the ground, because you are driving home from a race, right, or a really rainy practice, or you like show up with the birthday cake, or you've built that trust, right? And then as you move into more of an administrative role, and you slowly you're going to go running the other way as I keep talking, but as you sort of stop, as you have less of that on the ground contact and relationship building, I think that's where, in some ways, for me at least, it got harder, right? Because when the early years of Row New York, those girls were like family, those teenagers. And so there was that trust. And then you back away because you're raising money, or you're building a board, or you're writing grant proposals. And then you're no longer that person, you are just a white person over here, and you don't have those relationships. And I think that's a hard transition. Selfishly, I think it's harder on the person who loses the relationships with the young people. So,
Right. And on the other hand, what I'm excited about is the opportunity to really start to see those relationships develop around the country, and then to actually be able to be there and to meet the kids, and to really like see those relationships that are being developed because of STEM to Stern, because of the work that we're doing. And I think that's,
you still get that. You get that part. That part doesn't go away. But that's why I'm saying it's sort of like a selfish loss.
Yes.
In my perspective, like I'm sad because I don't have those relationships anymore. But if you really care about the growth, and the diversity and the inclusion, then it's not about you, right? It's not about like, I don't get those van rides anymore. It's about, have I grown this program? Are you seeing those relationships? And even if it's not you in them. So I completely,
and I still
agree
have
with you.
like, there's so many kids in Milwaukee right now that I'm just so tight with. So Milwaukee is definitely still like, it still feels like my baby, like,
and you always will be. And with those kids, you always will be.
And thankfully, many of them are, either newly in high school or still in our STEM to Stern program. So
wait till they're getting married, Will. Wait till they have babies and they're like 32.
Right.
Then you're going to feel really old.
Yeah.
Well, and they're like, Amanda, I'm married. I'm having my second baby. I'm like, what? You have to go home and do your homework. Like, what are you talking about? You're married.
Wow. Yeah,
but you have some time.
Right.
You have some time with them.
Yeah. So what is your vision for rowing? You're the CEO of US Rowing. Like, what is your overall vision for our sport?
I have visions for our sport and for our NGB, our national governing body. Some are sort of more exciting than others. I think right now we're in the like just get the house in order mode. I'm just hitting year 1, so this is about get the staffing and structure and systems in order. That's not exciting to most people, but it's necessary. And then it's about how do we make this organization sustainable, right? It's been sort of running on fumes for a long time now, and it shouldn't be, right? It should be sustainable and strong so it can grow the sport and diversify the sport and support an incredible national team, para team, senior team, junior team, the beach sprints rowers. And it's no secret that I'm fully committed to how do we make this sport better reflect the diversity of this country, right? And how do we find talent in places we haven't looked before? So I'm super excited to help reshape what a quote unquote rower looks like. I think for too long, people have had a very narrow vision of what a rower is and where they come from and what they look like. And I'm super excited to really make a case for, hey, if you like working hard and you like being a part of a team, we will find a seat for you in the boat and we will support you. And that's what's amazing about our sport, right? It's not a gymnastics or a basketball where you have to play it forever and have some coordination, So I think the future is bright. I think we're in a what is it? Storming, norming, performing. We are storming. We have not begun to even norm. So we're storming now, but we will be performing soon.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and I am right there with you.
Excellent. I know you are, Will. I'm so excited.
So cool.
All right, thanks for joining from sunny San Diego.
Thank you.
And go eat a cheeseburger and some mac and cheese. Since recording this interview with Will, I'm delighted to announce that U.S. Rowing received a generous grant of $250,000 from Winklevoss Capital to support this work. We're tremendously grateful to Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss and their dedication to making rowing accessible to young people in this country. For our next show, I want to welcome our first guest host. I hand the mic to Olympic, European, and double world champion from Great Britain, Tom Ransley. Tom is the deputy editor of Row 360, the independent global rowing magazine. He catches up with Fred Schock, the executive director of the Head of the Charles Regatta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts. It will help others to find us. And if you have any suggestions, questions, or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch via theswingofthings@usrowing.org. Thanks for listening.